Now, despite losing the first leg to PSG 1-0, Arsenal are still in with a chance in Paris to get a result to get to the final. Now, a big player that is going to contribute to that is Thomas Partey, and with him being unsuspended from this game, in this video we're going to talk about his involvement and just how effective he can be for the team. So let's get into it. Now, although I think my opinions of Thomas Partey as a player have changed quite a lot over the time at the club, there's no doubt about it. Against Real Madrid, he was one of our best players, especially at the Bernabeu, and he is such an important player for these big Champions League games which Arsenal missed in that first leg. Now, first of all, I do not want to start making comparisons and say that, well, he's better than Rice and Rice didn't do that role brilliantly, because I actually think it's a lot more of a complex situation than just having a comparison between two players in the same role, and it did work very differently. Now, in the first 25 minutes, it is no doubt and no secret that Arsenal struggled the most in the game. Now, they adapted in real time, and I think we had adaptations that made that easier for us to get out and create and have chances, but there was definitely that moment early on where it was a big worry with how PSG were playing. Now, when Arsenal tried to build up, PSG were doing a very good job at pressing in. We knew that they had a very strong man-to-man marking presence, and they can easily push out whenever they want to, and they really used this to great effect early on, which was causing us a lot of problems. You can see Rice was having to come towards the goalkeeper to receive the ball, and they were able to get towards him close with Dembele and one of the midfielders also covering, which didn't give much space for Rice in these areas, and he had to kind of put the ball off. Now, straight away, something in this game that really didn't help early on is that Rice in these positions is going to be that more conservative player. When there is a player behind him and they press up against him, Rice is a big guy and is not necessarily known for his quick, tight area dribbling, which means that he is most likely going to pass this ball back to a fullback or the centre-back who is pushed out wide. This means this invites pressure, especially on that fullback, where he basically has to loft the ball high. He can go back to Raya or another centre-back if they're free, but it's still going to take a long time and it could be risky with Dembele pushing up and also Desir Douar as well. So in order for Arsenal to get the ball out, they basically just have to boot it away, which was becoming problems because PSG were pushing up and winning them balls and the second balls quite a lot. Now, straight away, Partey will definitely be a better option in this press if PSG still do it, because he has that ability to turn and receive and carry the ball. Now, I've questioned about Partey's carrying this season. I think it has definitely taken a bigger downturn than before, but he can still turn and pass it off to other people within space that will get the ball. Now, early on, the real issues as well were happening because Marino was just too far out of the play. Miles, you can see, was getting kind of blocked from in front of him and in the back, so he couldn't actually receive the ball. And Marino was in that striker lineup next to Trossard, getting 1v1 man marks by Marquinhos, which wasn't really being much successful for us. Now, in order for this to actually change, Arsenal did a few things that worked. We brought Miles a lot deeper, where he would come right to the goalkeeper and receive the ball. We allowed Rice to kind of push out wide and move into a little bit more space and not have to keep coming back. And in the forward areas, we actually allowed Marino, more importantly, to come a lot deeper. Now, I think Marquinhos in this game was okay, and I think he did a good job at coming out to our players and making sure they couldn't get it. So in order to sort of facilitate this, what we did is we had Trossard go to that left-hand side to sort of mark Marquinhos and make Marquinhos his man, and that meant Marino was then with Pacho, the other defender, making him have to push out. Now, they didn't want Marino to get space, and they were still very strict on their man-to-man motion. This meant that when Marino came really deep up to that final third within our own box, he was often bringing Pacho there the whole time, which was creating space in behind for Arsenal and an ability to actually go around the press a few times. This is because Marino and Miles in particular in that midfield are much more half-turn players. They can receive the ball in areas, and it created another option where we could just pass it to get out. And as soon as Marino receives this ball, you can see that Creatures, Kvaratskhelia or Fabian Ruiz don't know whether to go towards Marino or towards Rice. So what they end up doing is they started making that movement to sort of block Marino and try and get out to him, and Pacho's there late because he had so much ground to cover, and then Rice is able to move out wide outside the block and actually run into that space, and he is much better running into that space than he would be without that space being there and have to run into traffic, which is different to Partey. Now, what Partey in this team means is that the whole team can kind of be a little bit reshuffled. Overall, you're going to see Rice more into that Marino role, into that left centre mid, and Marino hopefully up front, while Partey can be there. And the great thing about this is that when teams like like this will press up and they will be a bit late, you trust Rice as well to make their movements a lot more than Merino. In these deeper positions, especially this far deep, you would prefer Rice to kind of be where Merino is as well and sort of facilitate for players on the ball. Partey or Miles Lewis-Skelly can receive from the goalkeeper and turn and maybe get past the player, and then Rice can run into them spaces in behind, which can be very important. Another thing this will definitely add is when Arsenal were playing in this game, we didn't really have that ball over the top on lock because Merino would have to come deeper in certain areas to help us press it, and we couldn't really loft that ball to Trossard, who was getting manhandled in the air. This switcheroo makes it a lot better. Partey can probably facilitate by himself in deeper areas, and he can have help from Timber as well, or Saliba on his right hand side, and it can allow him to make them risky passes where he puts the ball through for Miles, who can actually take that on and run, which we saw a few times in this game, which was successful. This also allows people like Rice to get that space in between the midfield and the defense with the gaps that were created, and more importantly, it also gives the opportunity for Raya to have long balls where Rice can even have the space, or Merino can come deeper alongside him and they can run off each other, and we can trust them to probably win more headers than Trossard was in this game. Now, there's a few things I also expect to happen a little bit more which worked well in this game, such as Saliba coming really far out wide on this right hand side and Timber pushing up kind of gave that space, and Creature Kvaratskhelia, you see in a lot of these plays, isn't actually there because he's marking Timber man to man and Timber is gone, so it takes a player out of that area, and that's why Rice was able to run into that channel in the first place. Now with Partey, you want this maybe a little bit different because yet again I don't think Partey is necessarily that power runner consistently anymore at his age, but he can turn really well within these tight areas and then pass it to someone else who can make that run, which will definitely help the build up in that way. And there's also other concerns I think I had in this game. There's certain points with Merino in this position. I think he doesn't really understand the pressing metrics as much. It's quite hard for him to sort of understand in midfield when he's got to push up, especially with Trossard kind of being a bit free roamy around him. And also I think that with the tracking back, more importantly, it wasn't there when Arsenal lost the ball. There's a few times in transitions that they went in between everyone in the middle and we just really couldn't catch up. Rice could do a good job at trying to get there, but at the end of the day, he is the only one. Merino was just too far out of the play and he's just not really a quick player. In the statistics of pace used in the Prem, I think he's the second slowest player in the Prem this season with high speed average, which isn't showing great speed overall. This will allow Rice to be in this role a lot more and he can come back and help Partey, but also I think it allows Arsenal to kind of a little bit more control in the attacking areas. I think one of the major issues in this game overall was that the ways that Arsenal could get out from the press is by carrying the ball most likely, but when your big carriers are in that defensive pivot being Miles Lewis-Skelly and Rice, it kind of limited Arsenal in many ways where we needed to get Rice into that space to run, but he's also got to be that guy that defends and tracks back and be there for cover, because the centre backs yet again were getting messed up and they couldn't really push out against these players because the wingers were coming inside and making it difficult, which also gave space as well with the fullbacks doing that a lot, very attacking for PSG. Now another thing Arsenal will need to do in this game is to platform Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think he was our best player in that game in the first leg, and I do think Rice in that left 8 will probably be as effective with the physicality that PSG don't have and they've still struggled with, but Miles needs to be getting the ball in these tight areas and making sure he runs, and he's not the only one. I think with PSG's very structured man-to-man press, and even with us pulling players out in different positions and there was gaps there, they cover well to get into them gaps when they need to. The best thing they are good at doing is being aggressive when you receive the ball, so if you can turn a player, it does mean a lot of things have to change around and then players become a lot open, and that is exactly what you want. The gaps between the defense and the midfield for them were so high, and if you can get into them attacking areas, into them gaps, which we saw Miles do in that first half, then they don't really have the opportunity to cover, and one of the centre backs has to push out, which gives us more space in behind, which is something we have to focus on in this second leg. And overall, what is probably quite simple about all of this is that Arsenal need Partey because we need that physicality throughout the team. Miles has it, Rice does have it, but I prefer it in the 8 at the moment, and Merino has it as well. Unfortunately for Trossard, this wasn't a game for him, and I think he really struggled. And before the game, I said there was definitely ways it could work, because in the first time we played PSG, he was able to be a very effective player at getting us out the press, and even in this game when he pinned Marquinhos, it did help as well. But especially out wide in this game, PSG did a really good job at limiting us being able to use them wide areas, and even when their fullbacks pushed up, we didn't really take that space as enough as I would want to, and most of the attacks that Arsenal had came through the centre originally and then moved to that wing position in the final third, which is something we have to focus on as well. So in this game, Trossard wasn't the most effective overall because he wasn't really that presence in the forward areas. More importantly, he just isn't physical, isn't good enough to win headers down, and I think sometimes he's a bit slow in putting a ball through or holding the ball up in deeper areas, which I know some people wouldn't want to see. But he weren't the only one. I think a lot of our attack really did struggle in this game overall. Now, with Mourinho being up front, that should be a better option where we can just loft that ball through. I know Rice passing wasn't the best in this game. It was much better than it was against Palace, but still not the best we've seen from him. So hopefully he can get that back up to that level. But Mourinho needs to be able to pin these defenders and take them on and head the ball down for oncoming runners like Rice. Partey needs to be that sort of solid foundation for people like Miles to really work off and take that courage to run forward. And I think in this game, you're still going to see people like Timber not really go forward unless it's needed. And even then, I think you'll probably see a Ben White come on later on into the game. Now, there's a lot more I have to talk about with this game overall, and I might do another video about certain players that we probably want to see. But overall, I do think Partey will be a very impactful player for this game because I do think it suits him, and we don't really have anyone else that can play that role as best as him in this certain circumstances. And more importantly, it just helps the team play in better positions like Mourinho and Rice in the team instead of Trossard, unfortunately for him. Now, let me know what you guys think in the comments overall. Do you think we can still win? Do you think the odds are against us? And what is your predictions for the game overall? Put them in the comments. Appreciate it as always, and I'll see you in the next one.